So I said, it has to be me. I can do it. It's going to be me. And they were like, well, Diane, it's very hard. I said, I get how hard it is. And I know how hard it's going to be. It has to be me.
Hello everyone, Rhoda here. Welcome to episode 210 of the Assyrian podcast. For today's episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Diane Patheiu, a seasoned journalist and news anchor with a deep connection to her Assyrian heritage. Diane shares her story from her early days in broadcast journalism to her current role with ABC7 Chicago, highlighting the challenges and successes she has encountered along the way. We delve into her experiences of representing the Assyrian culture in the media, the importance of storytelling and preserving our heritage, and her insights on the evolving landscape of journalism. In this conversation, Diane also opened up about her husband's battle with cancer, sharing the resilience and hope that carried them through such a difficult time. We further discuss her personal experiences with infertility, touching on the emotional and cultural layers of navigating this journey. I hope you'll join us as we explore Diane's inspiring story, her dedication to amplifying Assyrian voices in the media, and the moments of vulnerability that shape her powerful narrative. Talking to Diane reminded me what sharing our stories can do for others, and I know it made me a little braver. And now, without further ado, here's Diane Patheiu. All right, Diane, welcome to the Assyrian podcast.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm so excited that we get to chat today. Like I told you in my message, I've been following you on social media for a while, and I've just been so impressed about not just your career, because that seems like it's going great and you get to do so many fun things, and I can't wait to hear about that. But I've also really enjoyed how openly you've shared of your life.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to dig in and talk about all of that. But let's start with you growing up in Chicago. I saw that you grew up in Rogers Park. Is that right?
Yeah. So we were there for the first 14 years. And it's actually kind of a funny story. So we were in a not so unique situation, those of us that are Assyrian, even Middle Eastern, any kind of like ethnic minority will understand this setup. But we lived in an apartment building where like my grandma was on the bottom floor, my cousin was on the top floor, my cousins were across the street, how that goes, aunts and uncles, everybody was like within like a 3-building radius. I'm not even kidding. And I know that you understand that. And so slowly people were moving out of the neighborhood because the neighborhood was changing. And a lot of Assyrian people were going up to the northern suburbs, like Lincolnwood, Skokie, Mountain Grove, that sort of thing. And my parents were like, we love where we live. We want to raise our girls in the city, that sort of thing. But the neighborhood high school I was going to go to had some violence during that time period. So my dad's like, well, look, if you can test into a better high school, a better CPS high school, we'll stay. And if you can't, I'm afraid we're going to have to go. And I was like, oh no. And so it was so funny because here was this like decision weighing on me, like, am I going to be able to do this? And I totally tanked and I did not pass. And so we picked up and moved to the northern suburbs, and like, it was like so devastating. So I spent the first 14 years in the city, and then we moved to the northern suburbs where I went to high school, and then I went to college in the city. And so yeah, it was, I had the best childhood growing up. Like I said, I was close to everyone, which was such a safe environment to be a part of. And I was around, other than like my family, around so many different other ethnic families. I mean, just any kind of nationality you can think of is who I grew up around. And that was, I think, set me up for success and understanding and compassion. And, there were different religions and different races and creeds and stuff. And it was just, I feel like I'm so blessed to have grown up that way. My sister, on the other hand, is 3.5 years younger than me. And we got out, she didn't have those. I mean, she has the memories, but hers were more in the suburbs, and she feels that way about the suburbs, And so it was a unique perspective that I'm really happy that I was able to experience.
Yeah, it's interesting how uh growing up where we do and who we're surrounded by sort of can shape our worldview in so many different ways.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
talking about growing up around people that were not just your family, as much safety as that provides you, and your grandma and aunt and cousins, but also just people who are different from you. That sets you up to behave in a different way and show up in spaces in a different way, which is so unique. And I love that.
Yeah, and I think it really helped me because I had to move on to smaller markets when I first started my career. There weren't a lot of people like in Iowa, for example, that came from different places and looked different. And I'm glad that I came into it knowing about this great big world,
Mm.
this was just kind of a different way of
Yeah.
growing up in like my 20s and 30s. And so, it was unique, but it's something I'm very, very, I feel like I'm very lucky and blessed to have experienced.
For sure. How did you decide your course for, your sort of educational course and what you were going to do? Did you know what you wanted to do before you got to college?
I did. So I think my mom said I was like 5 years old when I had made this declaration of like wanting to be a news anchor. And so I would sit in the kitchen and pretend that the cans of corn or peas or whatever were like a news item that absolutely needed to tell you about. So I would like I would embellish these stories about this can of peas or whatever. My mom would like tell me these stories of like me sitting on like acting like I'm delivering news. My much like all of us, our families are immigrants. And so my family learned English watching the news. So
Ah,
the news was always on. And so it was like just such a fabric of my childhood. And my grandma used to always say to me how she could just envision me, being on TV and doing all these things. Anyway, so it was always like this back of my mind thing. And then when I went into high school, I had never been more sure about anything. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I'll learn. For sure, this is what I want to do. And I never, ever changed my mind. I mean,
wow.
I talk about this all the time with my husband. I don't think there was ever a moment where I'm like, I don't know about this. Ever in 23 plus years of doing this, I never stopped and said, maybe I'm done. No, like I'm still happy. I still like doing what I'm doing. And so the path sort of chose me, and it was just a matter of me trying to figure out how to get to where I want to get to, which is back home. And it was an interesting path. I learned a lot along the way. I know that the path is a lot easier now for ethnic or minority women and men. And I'm really happy about that because I don't know that it was necessarily like that even when I was growing up in the business. So it's
For
just changed
sure.
so much in such a positive way. Even when like all we hear is like, oh, fake news or blah, you hear all this stuff and it's like, fine, like you can think what you want, but you still need your local news because you need to know what happened down the street. Like that's still going to be important, whether you believe it or not. You knowing what happened to your neighbor or the person down the street is going to be essential. Like it's just really important. So I kind of hone in on that and just, yeah, so the
Yeah.
path has been really interesting.
I always think about this because I feel like folks who are in the news who do local news are in such a unique position. When I was younger, my dad listened to like nightly news, right? Like every night there was news that he would watch, and it's so different now with 24 hours of news networks where all they do is the news, and so that can be sort of overwhelming. So, to you, what's the difference between those kind of, not that they're different, they're still news, but like, how do you differentiate between them?
So I'm going to make this like real simple because I think this sometimes even the simplest things that we don't think about really kind of answers the question. So when you think about like what's the difference, I think about who are you going to watch when you want to know if it's going to snow tomorrow? You're not going to turn on CNN to be like, am I going to get 20 inches tomorrow? Because this is Chicago and you literally can get it tomorrow. You're going to watch your local news. Okay. Who am I going to watch when I need to know if like the Kennedy is backed up? I'm going to watch my local news. Who am I going to watch if I know if my local elections, if the person that's going to pass whatever legislation in my town, or like even like a school referendum. Like, let's say you're in the, Lake Forest school district and you want to know if your referendum, you're not going to go to CNN and be like, let me see if it's like, that's how it's like pinpointed, if that makes sense. So that's how to me, that's the biggest difference, is that big picture is great. And I always feel like you have to at least check in to know what's going on. But the nitty gritty stuff, that's in your own backyard, to me, that's super important, especially this day and age when there's this city, there's just so much going on. I mean, we make national news almost daily. And that's how much is going on here. So I always just feel very connected to the big picture in our little world in Illinois, because so much is going on.
Yeah, and sometimes those stories from the smaller communities, like you said, when they make the national news, it's like someone must have reported it on a smaller scale in order for it to make the national news, right?
And that's exactly how it works. It's not like you're calling CNN, or it's very rare for you to call CNN and then be like, yes, we're interested. It just doesn't really happen. I mean, you call your local news agency who has like an affiliation with CNN, and then, that's how the spiral begins. But yeah, no, and the city, I mean, we're so small, but so big at the same time, or so big and so small at the same time, depending on how you look at it. There's so much stuff going on, and it's just so interesting on so many different levels.
What would you say you learned about I'm sure a part of being a journalist or a news anchor is learning about presenting the news in a certain way so that you have integrity and honesty and providing your viewers with the information they need to know. If you had to pick the one thing that you always carry with you related to that, what would it be?
That's good question. So I think I learned how to do that through school. I mean, really, the one-on-ones I learned from school, how to keep everything neutral. And now it's like second nature. But no, this is how I think about it. Unless we're doing something lighthearted and fun, nobody cares about my opinion when they're watching a story. So you always have to think like that. Like, nobody cares about your opinion, Diane. Nobody cares. Just tell me the facts. I don't care. I just care about the facts. So if you always say, and it's very humbling, by the way, if you always say that to yourself, you're setting yourself up to succeed, because then you cannot write a story based on your feelings. There's nothing to do with your feelings. You have to write it based on what the facts are. If I'm at a fire, for example, like, I can't be like, oh, this fire was devastating and it was a vacant home that nobody lived in. Like, it's like my opinion of devastating is not going to match up with the facts. It has to match up with the facts. So like, that's always how I think about it. Like, nobody cares about your opinion. Unless you're doing something light and whatever, and somebody says like, what do you think, Diane? Nobody cares in a news story about what you think.
That's so interesting, because when I think about even like reading an article in the New York Times or anywhere, that's an interesting thing to pay attention to as a consumer of news, because there are certainly times when I feel like you read certain words that elicit feelings in you that, like, if those words, if those adjectives were different, or if they presented me with what was happening, I may not feel that way. And so that's interesting as a consumer of news, to be thinking about too, that like, who is this person? And if I'm suddenly finding myself agreeing with their point of view and not just thinking about, well, here's the facts of what has happened, then there's something is not right with this relationship here, and someone's trying to influence me in a specific direction.
And the perfect example of that is, back when the terminology of fake news came out, people were confusing cable news shows, opinionated cable news shows that had the name of the anchor, so like the Diane Patheiu show, with news. That is very different. Because when you stick my name on a show, then you're going to get my opinions. You're coming to this show based on this person's opinions. And people were going to those shows thinking what they were saying was neutral facts. And that's not what that was. And so there was this people would be anti this or anti that or for this or for that. And people took that as, and that's not what it is. You have to differ, you have to know the difference between somebody that's writing something based on their opinion or somebody's writing something based on fact. And the lines are so blurred this day and age. And yeah, one simple word can change so many, like when I said, a devastating fire versus a fire that was quickly put under control. I mean, it's so different. You're thinking, oh, devastating. It's like, and then, oh, they put it under control. Maybe it wasn't that bad. The terminology is so important. And the words of the person that, the mouth of the person that's coming out of, that's also important too. Because if it's my opinion show, then it's my opinion show.
Yeah.
But if it's not,
That's super interesting because there have been various court cases over, these opinion shows, and the argument has been, well, this is an opinion show. If people want to believe me, that's on them. So I think as consumers of news and media, I think we need to be aware of that too. Of course, that's harder to do when the show is hosted on a news network, right? Because like people sort of
oh,
expect that to be balanced and neutral. But of course, what you said about someone's name being attached to it makes so much sense.
it's like watching an influencer on TikTok. If
Mhm.
I, as a business owner, own, a certain brand of lotion, and I pay this influencer to push my product, and you follow that influencer, and this influencer starts pushing that product. Now, they don't necessarily even like the product, but they're getting a real big check out of it. So they're going to influence you to buy it. There is a perfect example, modern day, of we scroll all day, and how many times are we like, oh, I really like that. Yeah, I'm going to buy that based on the person's opinion. But it's not even their real opinion because it was coerced based on check.
Yeah.
So you really have to be so much more intelligent this day and age to weed out the not so truthful stuff.
Yeah, I used to teach reading classes to adults. They were like speed reading classes, but one of the things we often taught them when we got to the nonfiction section was some of the work of reading the nonfiction book starts before you've even read the first word on the first chapter. You want to look at the back, look at what people are saying about the book, who is the writer, what kind of school of thought does the writer come from, what sort of qualifications do they have to provide the information to you, and then go into the reading knowing all of that, because without that you might just go in and say, oh well, I'm reading this book about this topic and it will influence you a certain way. But if you know that I know what sort of thought this writer is going to be pushing, then you can be aware of that. You don't have to agree or disagree with the person, but at least you're aware that you can remove yourself from that position and be able to see it a little bit more objectively, if you will. So I always think about that with news too. Like if anyone ever shares an article with me and I don't recognize the publication, I immediately look them up to find out like who's behind this, how are they being funded, because that sort of like you were saying, if they're they are influencing us to behave a certain way or think certain things, so that's super important.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you can say the same thing about something like Twitter. When it got sold, things changed on Twitter. Why? Well, because the owner wanted it a certain way. And so did we all get off Twitter? Not all of us, but a lot of people did. And so there's your another example of influence and how important it is to find out how much that person has an effect on you.
Mm. Yeah. There's this scene, do you know the show The Boys?
No.
It's on Amazon Prime. And it's super interesting, but what I always remember about the show is this person who becomes sort of radicalized, but you watch the radicalization happen because he wakes up and turns on the TV and hears a certain language being repeated over and over again. Then he goes to the store to buy something, and it's again that person repeating the same thought. And so you kind of see how much we are influenced by the just media in general that we consume. And I always think about that scene because it's like if we're not aware of who's telling us how to feel about the world or about what's happening in our little corner of the world or just things in general, then we might get caught up in that far too much than if we were just relying on what our own brains and what we were actually feeling and thinking about it.
Yeah, I don't want to say second guess ourselves, but I don't know that we put enough confidence in ourselves and what we know to be true. I think we're putting that a lot on social media right now. Like, tell me how I should feel. Tell me what I should buy. Tell me to, and it's like, take that, whatever you see with a grain of salt, because you know what you want. You know how you feel. You know what's right and wrong. You don't need somebody to tell you. You don't. And so I think sometimes that gets lost in the heaviness of life. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
just want to turn to this person and just like not think. And that's cool. And I understand that, but just respect it for what it is.
Yeah. Oh, that makes so much sense. Thank you. I appreciated that conversation about that topic. Tell me a little bit more about what you do now, because what I have seen is like the traffic bit, and then on your social media, you post the soap chat, which I love. That's so fun. And I saw some other things too with dining with Diane and things like that. Tell me more about what's on your plate these days.
Okay, so the traffic gig that was actually a promotion that I got back in, it was like May or June now, I can't remember, it just all blends together. But so I was always a reporter anchor at Channel 7, and I filled in for our former traffic anchor the entire time I've been there, which next month is going to be 13 years. And she was set to retire, and I applied for the job and had to wait. Gosh, I don't remember how long. It was like 3 months at least for all these other applicants to get weeded through and stuff. And so I eventually got the job. And so that is a promotion in and of itself. But being a traffic anchor with so many years of news reporting experience, I am now able to do things that are different. So where I was doing majority breaking news every single day, now I get to do more lighthearted stuff, which includes soap chat, which we were doing for a while now, I think 10 years or so. But we decided to take it and put it into the actual program, the actual show. So that's in addition to the show. And the addition with Diane actually was developed 20 years ago, I think. And then I recreated it when I got here to ABC, and we just haven't found time to do it. And now we have. And so that was something that had been in creation for many, many years. It finally came to fruition, which was so nice. So what this position is now allowing me to do is really be able to be a lot more creative, which before was not a thing because I was constantly in breaking news. So it's definitely a different path. I did not see things going this way, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm really trying to embrace every minute of it because I can be creative and not have to be so serious all the time, which is really, really nice because it had been so many years of it. This is my fourth station, and every single station was breaking news. So it's a nice change of pace to be able to do creative production stuff and still report on things that are a lot more lighthearted and be a part of the morning show, which, it's so nice to be able to do that and to bring some different things to the show.
My I always think of Robin from How I Met Your Mother. If you've watched that show, she was
Oh yeah.
also an anchor. Like she would get called to go report in stories all over the place. So as you said, breaking news, that's who I was thinking of. What was that life like? Like, would you just get a call and had to show up to a place and report?
So we still have like our shift, right? So my shift for the last, I think it was less than 10 years. Yeah. Let's just say 10 years, just to round it out, but I think it was less than that, was the early morning shift. So our shift now it's a little earlier, but the shift at the time started at 3 a.m. So you had to be at the station ready to go. So hair, makeup, clothes, everything ready to go at 3 a.m. that's when you got your assignment. So a lot of times, majority of the time, it was something that happened breaking overnight. So a house fire, traffic accident, a shooting, something like that. Occasionally you would have like court cases, big court cases, like the Madigan case, which is going on now. I would cover that a lot. And so really influential court cases we would cover all the time. Really like top news stories of the day. So it was me and another reporter, both one of, each of us would cover one of the top stories of the day. So I was always covering the top story or breaking news. And so I would not know what I'm doing until I woke up at 1:30 in the morning and checked my phone and saw what I was doing. Now, during like something like elections, like, what you're going to do the next day. You're going to report on the numbers, right? That was easy. And even days like big court cases, you were doing that the next day. But stuff like where a police officer was shot, like, none of us predicted that was going to happen. So that was really like last minute stuff. And stuff would break while we're on the air. So like I'm doing a report, I'd get an email like, hey, switching gears, you got to go here because something else just happened. And we would just like literally pack up the truck and take off. So it was very busy. I mean, I loved every minute of it. So I can't say that it was a hardship because it wasn't. I really enjoyed, and you meet so many different people, you interview so many different people, you're in so many different scenarios. You really get to learn so much. It's hard not to, just because you see all this new stuff. Every day was different. Even if you were on the same court case every day was different. And that there's something very special about that. You get so much unique experience when your day is never the same. But at whatever time, noon or 1 o'clock, when we were done. So you get to dump everything, like that's it for the day. I never have to think about this or do this again today. Like I'm done. And that's kind of nice. So in the position I'm in now, I don't really get to walk away because I'm still working afterwards, even though it's more of a lighthearted production, it's still like constantly. Whereas when you're doing breaking news or like they call it general assignment reporting, you're done for the day. You get to put it away and like case closed, and then I can prepare for tomorrow. So it's a really cool experiences on both sides, whether you're doing something different every day or the same thing every day. It's very different.
I know based on our conversations and trying to figure out a time to meet that you have a very unique schedule. So what's a day in your life like in terms of hours, when you sleep, when you work?
Yeah, it's really hard to hear, but okay. So I wake up at 1:15 a.m. And so I am out the door. I don't have to be in hair and makeup out the door when you anchor. So I'm out the door by like 1:45, 1:50, get to the station, and I sit in the makeup chair at 2:35. And then, you get all dolled up and you do your hair, then you change your clothes, that whole thing. That's when the show starts at 4:30. So you have to be on the air ready to go 4:30. Now, my particular shift right now, being a traffic anchor, I'm on the air every 10 minutes. So brand new report every 10 minutes. I'm thankful because I have a wonderful producer. So between he and I, we have to listen to dozens of police scanners, make dozens of phone calls. And so every 10 minutes, it's got to be basically a different report. It's not scripted, so it's all ad-libbed. It's produced in that we make graphics and like build words and stuff like that, but it's not written out. You actually have to know what you're talking about. So that's unique. And then after the show ends, so we do a show until 7, then we do a streaming show from 7 to 8, and that's on our streaming app. And then that's a little bit of a lighter show. We have a little more flexibility to be creative. And then after that, we do some news briefs until 9. And then at 9 sort of starts this second shift of the day. So when I'm doing Dishing with Diane or any other reporting stories, I go out to shoot right around 9:15, 9:30. So from 9:30 until right around 1, I'm doing other projects. And then I get to come home and I'm a full-time caregiver to my husband. So like the first part of the day is done and then I help my husband out. The rest of the day, we have appointments every single day. So we rush to get to appointments and things like that. Then I come home. I'm usually home depending on the day. If we don't have like a really long day, called long days at Rush. If we don't have the long day, then I'm usually home by 4 and I make dinner. We eat, I clean up, do all that stuff, get him ready for the next day, which is get out his pills, make his meals, do all that stuff. Then I get my stuff ready. So I shower, get my clothes ready, do all that. So I'm in bed by 7. I should be in bed way earlier. It's not enough time, but I'm in bed by 7 or 8. And, and that's one day. So it's
It's
a lot.
it's certainly a different kind of schedule. I'm curious about a couple of things. One thing you mentioned was the sort of working relationship with a producer. Does each
Yes.
anchor get their own producer?
No. So me as a traffic anchor gets a traffic producer because he has to build the graphics. So like he's in charge of like that portion of it. That's a separate job than my job. We work together, but his job is building the graphics, and my job is we talk through what we want them to look like. So I'm the only one that has a producer. Weather doesn't have a producer. News has tons of producers, right? So the news anchors don't produce their own stories. We have writers and producers and all sorts of things like doing that all the time. So news anchors have to really though prepare by going over all the scripts because they're going in there cold, like they have no idea. So they have to really work kind of like half hour ahead of time because we're going from 4:30 to 7 on cold reads. So you really have to try and read on the desk as much as you can to try and pre-produce. So like if you see a sentence that you don't see yourself saying it that way, you have to rewrite it. So you're like literally producing on the anchor desk. So that's a little different. So they don't have like single producers. We have tons of writers, tons of producers, and an executive producer for the morning show too. So, and editors. We've got a lot of moving parts when it comes to the morning show.
Do you watch the show, The Morning Show?
I do. It's not that far off. Now that's supposed to mimic like a network program, right? So they have a lot more more bodies, more people, and they have like drivers come and pick up in the morning. Like that's more of a network thing. So when you go to New York and you're working for the network, and network means like ABC News, NBC News, CBS News, they do have a much larger budget than like your local news team does.
Sure.
So they can hire more people, they have more bodies. And in that case, on the network level, each person does have their own producer. So that's very, very different than local news. And here it's we're kind of like really trying to simplify these jobs and have one person do multiple. I think that's just like any job, right? You have one person do multiple things. And that's the difference between like the network level and the local level. That's why people always dream of like going to the network, because ideally you can hone in on your one skill because you have a producer supporting you, a photographer, an editor, you have all these people that's just your team. Whereas local news, it's like one big team and like we all kind of like chime in and like share each other's resources.
Yeah. And how does it work with like affiliates? So you work for ABC7, which is an affiliate of like the larger ABC network?
Yeah, they call it OTV or you hear it oftentimes referred to as owned and operated or an O&O. So we are ABC News Chicago. So we are the Chicago affiliate to ABC News. So we have to follow all of the rules of ABC News, all of them. However, the thing that's local about about us, is that we have the ads that run on our TV space, 90% of them are going to be local companies. We certainly have 10% that are national or regional. Our salespeople are all here. We don't have satellite offices. Everybody's local. So whether it be in Illinois, in Indiana, or in Wisconsin, pretty much we're local. And so we are an affiliate in that we use ABC News. We are Chicago in that everything else, our operating budget, everything like that is local, which is good because, we're giving back to our own community. Like I'm not trying to work for New York, like I work for Chicago. So we do community events to raise money or awareness or whatever within our own community. So yes, the big name is affiliated with the network, but we're still locally operated.
I've also just seen, it's been so nice to see someone like you in the news because you have not shied away from speaking about being a Syrian and introducing people to our culture and who you are. What has that experience been like for you?
So that was my number one. Before I even got into the business, I said to my parents, because I had never seen an Assyrian, certainly not an Assyrian woman on the air in Chicago. So I said, it has to be me. I can do it. It's going to be me. And they were like, well, Diane, it's very hard. I said, I get how hard it is. And I know how hard it's going to be. It has to be me. I have to break that barrier. I just have to. So throughout my career, I would always explain to people like what Assyrians are, who they are, where they come from, the whole thing all along the way. And it was such a refreshing experience because people wanted to know. They were really interested in my nationality because they'd never seen somebody like me before on television. Now obviously today is a very different day, but back then, 23 years ago, it just wasn't like that. And so it was really exciting for me to talk about it because I did everywhere I lived. And then when I got home to Chicago, I was like, well, now you can't, I'm not going to keep my mouth shut because I became the first Assyrian woman to be on Chicago television. And that was an honor that I was not going to take lightly. And so I started reaching out to my local church and saying, hey, look, I want to do this. Like, who can you provide that could be TV ready, that can do this, explain this, can do this. And over the course of the last 13 years, I've been really able to highlight, I mean, granted, I wish I could do more, and I hopefully will, but at least highlight a little bit of who we are and what we have going on. And, the other day I was scrolling on, I can't remember what social media, and I saw there was another news station talking about an Assyrian
The Meso
matchmaking.
matchmaker.
Oh my gosh, I was so happy. I'm like, this is so exciting. Like, I want us to reach out to every, and I try to explain this to every Assyrian person that talks to me about a story they have. I always say my last line to them is, if I can't do it, reach out to the other stations. Now, I don't want the other stations to take away my story, of course not. But if I can't do it, I want somebody to hear your story. So I will encourage other people. My bosses are probably going to kill me, but I will reach out to others and say, hey, look, go call whomever, go call the station, go call the station, because your story is important. And if we can't air it, at least it gets aired. And that's all that matters to me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, I bet. And it was funny because I've met so many Assyrian people that work in places that they never talk about being Assyrian. I'm like, what is wrong with you? So he was like some huge deputy in the city of Chicago, like the deputy of, it was like the Parks Department or something like that. It was like a huge position. He was retiring. And he's like, well, you know how I found out you were Assyrian? Like, I was watching the show and you talked about you having, like, you always have people take off their shoes because, like, that's how Assyrian people. And he's like, that's the only connection I had to you. He's like, I had no idea you were Assyrian. I'm like, oh my gosh. And here is this guy in this terrific position that I probably could have been squeezing stories out of him this entire time, and we had just figured out he was Assyrian. So, like, the work is still not done. I still have to open my mouth bigger and wider and scream. So, but it's been a very pleasant experience because what's happened, I think, especially now with this new generation, is they want to use their voice to create this platform for Assyrian people. And what is more exciting than that?
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I think what a great place for you to be in Chicago, where so many Assyrians live. And so, with the food festivals and other kinds of events, like you get to talk about those, showcase those. That's really awesome. In fact, I think maybe 2 episodes ago, we had a feature on online dating. And one of the portions of the podcast episode was the girls who founded Meso Matchmaker. And I saw that same clip online, so that was cool.
I just thought that was so exciting. I had never heard of it before. I mean, not that I need it, but I had never heard of it before. And I'm like, what is this? So I just was so over the
Yeah.
moon.
That's awesome. You talked about being a full-time caretaker to your husband, and that's another piece of your life that you've shared on at least your social media. Can you talk a little bit more about that journey and what that has been like
Absolutely.
for you guys?
Yeah, we're very, very open about it. Now, we weren't always that way. So the decision to make his story public was all his. I was not going to be a part of making that decision because it's very personal. And when you're exposed like that, it's just like a whole different beast. So 2 years, so my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer back in December of 2020. And so he, was on the journey of chemo and radiation and everything that comes along with cancer. And 2 years into his journey, he said, I need to share my story. And I said, okay, well, tell me the limit, like, how much do you want me? He's like, let's just do it all. I need to do this. I need to be a positive light for people. I need to connect with others that are like me. So I went to my boss and I said, hey, like, this is what I want to do. I want to share this story. Are you comfortable with me doing that? And they said, absolutely. I think it would help a lot of people just to know that life isn't always perfect and that you guys are really going through something, and you can educate them on the latest clinical trials and things like that. So we set out to do a story based on his journey, his diagnosis, his treatment, and then talk a little bit about how people can get information about other treatment that maybe would be more suitable for them. So when we did this story, Good Morning America found out. Good Morning America said, you guys have got to be on our air. So they picked it up. And then Nick and I did a live interview with Good Morning America, which was so great. And so when that story aired, then it was like kind of a flood of people connecting with us and stuff like that. So it's been really touching to connect with people on that level, because it's so different than what I would normally connect with people about. So that was different. And I think sharing that story unburdens you. Like we felt a little unburdened, because people would see us in the street, and like they see him now and he uses like a cane because he has some right side weakness. And they go, oh, okay. So it's like not always perfect. And we're like, no. And I hope we've never given you the impression that it was. Like it's really a journey. And so we are so open, because people are always very hesitant to ask us like how he's doing or how I'm doing. Right. And I'm like, don't be hesitant, because if I don't want to tell you, I'll just say I'm going to talk about it. But I promise you're probably never going to get that out of me, because we don't want this to be like a pull the curtain and let's hide behind it kind of situation. He's not like that. I'm not like that. We want people with questions, and we've had a flood, but people with questions to feel like they can ask us. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to say, I don't know the answer. Let me connect you to somebody who does. And I have done that hundreds of times, if not thousands of times. Sometimes I just don't know. And I will say, like, let me connect you to the person I think is wise enough to answer this question. And Nick has done the same thing. And people have been reaching out across the globe, thanking him for sharing his story, because it was it was a cancer that really nobody talked about. It's not like breast or even prostate in men, or, like those are so much more talked about. And there are so many other cancers that are not. And so this was our opportunity to talk about something that not a lot of people were talking about. And then you like peel the onion, and it's like, oh, this person died from it, this person's going through it, this, and it's like, see, I mean, just at my job, there was my coworker with the exact same condition. Like, what are the odds? And then he comes to find out one of his colleagues with the exact same condition, all because he opened his mouth. So yeah, like I said, it was his decision to do it, and I was happy to facilitate that.
Yeah, I feel like when people find themselves in situations like that, there are two ways to approach it. One is, like you said, pull the curtain. We're gonna hide away, sort of, and I can't fully fault people or blame them in those situations either, because sometimes it feels like we're doing it to defend ourselves and protect ourselves if we aren't open, or able to share at the time. But it's so interesting how less alone you feel when you share, when you're in a situation like that, and how much you're doing that for somebody else who may have also been feeling lonely in that journey, just to know, like, oh, I'm not the only one going through this.
So I went through something similar. So when my husband and I got married, we tried to have children, and for some unknown reason, the doctors could not tell me, but I could not have any kids. And so we went through this 6 year long, or maybe it was 3 or 4 years. Let's just say 3 or 4 years long journey, six rounds of fertility treatments, and it was just like it wreaked havoc on my body. And people watched me gain all this weight on the air, and it's not like you can hide it on the air. It's like, it is what it is. And people assumed I was pregnant, or they would congratulate me, all these things. This is even coworkers. And so it was a very difficult time. So I very much hid behind a curtain during that time period. And it wasn't until 2.5 years ago, or no, it was 2 years ago, that I decided to share my story of infertility. And when I tell you, now I did not want to talk about it all that time, because I was so ashamed. I was so ashamed. When I tell you, when I told my story, it was like the boulder that was holding me back, weighing me down, was lifted. It was just like, I felt incredible. I didn't have to hide anymore. I didn't have to explain why I was 50 pounds overweight. I didn't have to do any of that anymore, because so many women were like, I went through the same thing. The same thing happened to me. Here's what you should do to get back here, lose your weight, or here's what you should do. It was like I got hundreds of best friends out of that one declaration. And that was so freeing. But I was also closeted with my story that entire time. So I can never fault somebody for keeping things close to the vest because you're protecting your sanity, you're protecting your heart, you're protecting your feelings. So yeah, no, I completely understand. Sharing isn't for everybody. In my family, and I'm probably a lot of Syrian people, we are not sharers. We don't share things. We keep it in the house. We don't tell anybody. That's just the way it is. And I'm okay with that. So I literally went to my parents and said, "Are you okay if I shared this?" Because I knew that it would affect everybody. Because when you put something like that out there, it doesn't just affect you; it affects your whole family.
Yeah.
And I totally got the okay, got the green light from them. Like I literally I'm 46 years old, went to ask my parents, like, is it okay? Because I didn't want them to ever feel, I don't want them to take on any burden of mine. And so, there still is a lot of shame in sharing. And I wish it wasn't like that, but especially as Syrian people, we don't want to share.
Yeah. As someone who's been through a similar journey with infertility, and like, I think that there are people that I felt really comfortable talking to about it. And there are other times when I felt like, oh, if I say something, here comes like all of the advice that's like that I'm not asking for and I don't want, and it's probably not medically sound. And so when I have found myself in situations where I just didn't want to talk about it, that has been the hardest part, because it's like I know what most people who are so well-meaning will want to say, and I find it hard in myself to be like, "Oh, I've heard that. I don't think that's how it works," you know? But it has for sure gotten easier to like be able to talk about it over time. And I think that was one of the earliest posts I saw of yours, where you were talking about that. And I thought, oh, okay, here's a kindred spirit.
Speaking of kindred spirit, wouldn't it be nice though, and you can take this idea to the bank, but wouldn't it be nice to have a podcast or a panel of Assyrian women, Assyrian women who've gone through
Yeah.
infertility issues, and we can talk to each other and share our stories. Like, I just think that would be, what is more loving and supportive than having a group of females get together. I know the men probably don't want to listen to it, and that's fine, but talk and share your stories and maybe educate the younger girls. Like, because I'm very open with my niece about what I hope for, and dream for her. And like, if I went through this struggle, I don't want you to. So this is the plan I think we should take. It's your decision, but this is the plan I think we should take for you so that you don't have to go through it. Like, imagine if somebody said to you, freeze your eggs when you're 22. Have an insurance policy, freeze your eggs when you're 22. And a Syrian person told me that. I'd be like, all right. Like, I guess I hadn't thought about it. Thank you for opening my eyes, opening my mind. I hadn't thought about it, that this is a real issue. And I don't know. I just think that would be so valuable. Maybe not gone are the days of marrying early, because I think I am seeing a little bit of that come back.
Sure.
So they're not for sure gone. But certainly women, Assyrian women, they really want to get an education. They want to start a career. I'm not saying that they don't, I'm not saying they have to stay there forever, but like, some of them start and then decide to be moms and scale back or whatever. All of that, like, we should be allowed to have all of it. We should be allowed to be 100% mom at home or 100% career mom. We deserve that choice. And if opening a discussion to determine how to get that done is something we have to do, I just hope we get there. I hope we get there, because I think so many Syrian women like just have the families that they always dreamed about, no matter what that picture looks like, when they want it.
Yeah, and what you said about like not having to, give up your dreams of an education, because it's not the 40s or 50s, where women couldn't even conceive of that. Maybe like there were a lot of women who just had a singular path for their future, and Thankfully, we live in a world where you can decide that if that's what you want, but you also have so many more options. And if you're interested in having an education and a career, more power to you. And desiring a family or wanting to plan for a family shouldn't stop you from also reaching for your dreams if they are in whether it be like the corporate world or education or government or whatever it might be. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I hope that that's to come.
Well, Diane, I feel like I could talk to you forever, but
Oh, that's so nice, Sita. That's a compliment.
yeah,
When you tell
no.
a reporter, I feel like I could talk to you forever. That is a compliment. That's the biggest compliment you could give me.
Oh man, it was so great to speak to you. I so appreciate you sharing so much about your life and your career. I live in Michigan, but we're in Chicago often, so I hope that if there's an Assyrian event or something in the future that you're at, I get to meet you in person.
Well, I just have to say thank you so much for asking me. I mean, it came out of nowhere. I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad we were able to find the time because really this has been such a pleasure. So yeah, no, thank you for asking me. Thanks for allowing me to even be on your podcast. I think it's really exciting, and I'm just so happy that we were able to connect.
Me too. Thanks, Diane.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Bye, you too. That's it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.